Hi, welcome to the Sensible Project Manager Hangout. This is the 11th Hangout. I'm really excited that this is still going good. And today is a special day. We have a great topic we're going to be talking about. The topic for today is being agile in a waterfall world. And we have a special guest, Joseph. I forgot to even make sure I got your. It's Flahif. Is that how you say it?
Pretty close, Flaif.
Flahif. Okay.
Pronounce the H, it's fine.
I knew that there was one thing I was going to ask you before we got started, and that was it. So anyway, I'm also joined with a few other folks. Hala is it Hala Salah? Is that correct? I said.
That's great, thanks.
Oh, great. Am I slaughtering everybody's name this morning?
No, we're just giving you hard material to work with.
Exactly.
Okay, so Hala is going to be our PM chat Twitter correspondent, I guess you could say. And anyway, so let's get right into things. Before I do, I just want to remind you, those that are on Twitter, if you want to watch, and of course, maybe Hala makes sure that everybody understands that they can go watch this live out at sensiblepm.com/hangout, and then they can watch that. We're streaming the PM chat. This has been a great partnership the last few times, being able to see what's happening there, and they're doing the same topic there as well on PM chat. So it's been a great partnership. And then this is going to be recorded, or it is being recorded, and later on, either later on today or tomorrow, I will post the Hangout notes as well. So that's kind of the business out of the way. So let's get into the introductions to everybody. So Joseph, let's start with you. If you would just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you're about, and kind of your expertise with Agile.
Sure. Joseph Flaif. I'm a project manager. I've been a project manager for many moons. I started out in network design, actually. So I have a hardware background. I then moved into actually doing project management. Someone told me that there's this interesting field called project management back in about 99. Got my PhD in 2001. I like to joke that I got it the year just before they added the ethics section, so be ethical. No.
Hey, that happens to be the year that I got it as well, and so you and I snuck in.
So did traditional projects for a long time there, till about 2005, I believe it was. And did a lot actually of construction projects, so I have my history in that kind of thing, doing the IT portion of the construction. So how do you deal with the cables and wires that go through the walls that give you your data outlet down there in the wall, and network designs that go along with that. Then I got put on a software project, and it was very different because there wasn't a wall to walk through or something physical to touch, and it was an abysmal failure, I have to say. And I can regale you with the story some other time, but after that, found that there's got to be a better way to do this. Looked around, found this thing called Scrum. Some guy named Ken was teaching a class in Bellevue, so I went and took a class with Ken Schwaber, who was, if you don't know, he was one of the guys that came up with Scrum back in the day. And I've never looked back since then. I don't think I've done traditional projects. The traditional sequential requirements, design, architecture, build, test, and deploy kind of traditional project. I haven't done one since. And I've just done Agile work. But not in what you would call a normal context, I think. And that's why the name of my company is Whitewater Project. And why the topic today of Agile and Waterfall World, because where I tend to end up working with my clients as a coach and consultant is in organizations that are not typical for an Agile implementation, or not easy for an Agile implementation. When software is your primary product, Agile is easy, right? Because of a lot of reasons. But when software is a support product, then it becomes much more difficult. Roles like the product owner have very little meaning within the organizational context, and you start to try and pretend things that aren't there. And you run into a lot of problems. So that's the context where I do most of my work and have my experience.
Okay. It
That's
sounds
me.
great. Thank you. A lot of what you just said parallels a lot of what I have gone through my career as well.
Yeah.
So, Hala, let's introduce you.
So I got my PMP after they added the ethics section. So I actually started out as a software developer many moons ago, and it was right out of college. My degree was in computer science. I started doing that for a couple of years and decided to leave it to the people who were really good at it. I actually, just because of certain job transitions in the market and where I was in the country, moving around a little bit, got opportunities to move into QA engineering, and so used development skills to do more white box testing. And it was great getting into the code and figuring out why things were going wrong. And I know we're talking Agile, but it gives such a better appreciation of the value of testing and of testing your code. And interestingly enough, I'm focusing on that right now as I'm working with developers and getting them to understand the value of unit testing your code and doing more testing. So from there on, I moved to project management just because I felt like I naturally tended to want to help projects really succeed and figure out what it was that wasn't working well. So I did that for a few years. Actually got my CSM, my Certified Scrum Master certification before my PMP. So I was lucky to be at Hewlett-Packard where they brought in some people to train a bunch of us, and I was a program manager at that point, and I pretty much made them add me to the class. I want to do this. So I got my CSM, and then a few years later I got my PMP, and I went between projects or between organizations that were more agile and then others that were very traditional, and then actually did consulting for a while last year, and was asked in a few occasions to help these very waterfall organizations implement Agile. So it was very much Agile in a waterfall world, which my gut reaction was no. But then the reality was yes, you have to figure out how to make it work. And so today's topic is very relevant and interesting.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I saw that you had the CSM on there. That's good. So, let's go to Yvonne. Let's introduce yourself if you would, please.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everybody. Well, I started in late 80s as a programmer, and then I've been in all the software development process. I get my PMP in 2006, and now I'm in the commercial part of the process. I'm selling software projects and managing like PMO the clients I'm working with, and I think that's it.
Great. Well, thanks, Yvonne. All right, let's welcome everybody. I'm glad everybody's here. Let's get into the topic now. So one of the things I was thinking about we would first do is make sure that we're clear on what Agile means to us. What does it really mean? I mean, Joseph, you touched on a little bit, but let's talk a little bit before we get into how that fits into Waterfall. What does Agile mean to us? And what does that mean in the sense of the type of business that we do as project managers? Any thoughts on that?
I think that in software development process we always need a way to respond to requirement changement. So we've seen in the last 20 years uh, opinions. We start with rational right process and OMT and ways that people try to respond to these changes in requirements. And I think Agile is the next step, and I don't think it will be the last. We are going to see in the next years new options and new proposals about how can we respond to this requirement change.
Good. Yeah. So go ahead, Joseph.
I wouldn't say anything. I'm listening.
Oh,
I want to hear what people have to say.
yeah, great. So I agree. So I have just as when I first got introduced to Agile, I decided my first foray into it would be just sitting along the sideline and watching it happen with one of the project managers that decided to jump in and try it on again, we were in a waterfall environment and they wanted to try a Scrum project. And so we watched that as it went. And then when I got to the point where I actually became a Scrum Master and took my first project, I absolutely saw the advantages. I'm a believer that it is a great thing for many projects, but not all types of projects. It's a agile anything that has got moving requirements um, and that type of situation. That is what agile allows you to do, and it's very effective, especially with software type of development.
But doesn't everything have moving requirements these days?
Yes, yes, it does. Even if I'm building a house, those requirements are changing. Uh, I'm going to change my carpet and all that kind of stuff. So yes.
No.
Other thoughts?
So then the question becomes if it's right for some projects, not other projects, and what projects is not appropriate.
Yeah, the challenges that I have with Agile is I have had maybe I just haven't seen it successfully done, trying to do, for instance, a large implementation of a software um, off-the-shelf type of a solution. That becomes a little difficult in my mind from an Agile point of view. Now, that's where I think this topic today really comes in handy because whereas I don't think, this is a personal opinion, whereas I don't think that Scrum using Scrum, for instance, when I'm going to do a large implementation, that becomes difficult for me. However, using agile techniques and some pieces of agile is absolutely effective. Paula, do you have any input from Twitter at all?
Well, so the Twitter community is saying that to some degree you can have Agile projects within a waterfall organization, which is the question that I threw out is, can you have Agile in a waterfall world? Can it work? Well, and people are saying some of the responses, like Michael Greer, is saying that waterfall can be broad and evolutionary stages as a framework, where Agile is implemented as cycles or iterations within that framework. And others are saying, people need to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, but definitely it's possible to run Agile comfortably in a waterfall organization. I think the major sentiment is that as long as it's very clear what parts of the organization are running in a waterfall way, what are your objectives by running certain things in a more agile fashion, and that's communicated, then it can work.
Yeah.
Joseph, your thoughts?
No, I'm glad they said it can work, that you can have agile projects in a waterfall environment, because if they said you couldn't, then I don't know what I've been doing for the past several years.
You're going to resign from this?
Well, I guess it was a myth. I was living in a dream. But it's not easy. The whole context of, there's like different directions I want to go. The concepts that are promoted by things like Scrum. I mean, be careful we don't say that Scrum is Agile is Scrum, right? Scrum is Agile, but there's more to Agile than just Scrum. So
right. I agree.
But since Scrum is 80% of the implementations out there, so that's kind of the default discussion. But there's some things that Scrum says you have to have, and I totally agree. If you want Scrum to work like smooth as silk, right? Then you have to have these things. You have to have a dedicated team. You have to have a product owner with the appropriate authority and knowledge and availability to be that person who can lead the work. You often don't get those things in a waterfall context. In an enterprise organization, and when I say waterfall context, I want to be, well, I'm going to go back. I want to answer the question that you had first, which was, what is Agile? I'd like to broaden the definition out a little bit and say that Agile is having the ability to adapt to changes in technology as fast or faster than those changes occur. So if you have a slow cycle technology change, you probably are able, if the technology change it happens every 12 months, right? Or on the other hand, you have technology changes that happen really, really fast. If your speed of delivery isn't faster than the speed of technology change, then you're going to struggle with Agile. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, and that is what I've experienced as well.
So with that as your definition, then time becomes a variable, right? Because we're talking about, just like in Agile estimation, they talk about relative estimation. We don't talk about hours when we're doing estimating. We talk about a relative number. We just defined Agile as relative to the speed of technology change. If you are able to implement faster than the speed of technology change, then you can iterate and gain the value quickly. If the technology change in your organization is 2 weeks, right, then you need to be implementing in faster than that change.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that you're able to adapt. And technology change, user requirements, right? So the requirements change very fast. And software is great at that, right? You can change software in 2-week iterations, no problem. If I'm in Seattle right now. If I am Boeing, which is just up there to the north,
I've been there,
and I'm building an airplane, how fast does my technology change?
You're talking potentially certainly months or maybe even years.
In parts. So let's pick this apart for a second. If I'm building an airplane, it takes about 5 years to go from concept to having a prototype available, having a plane. This is my understanding, my talking to folks. If you were buying a plane from me, and we agreed on this 5 years ago, all right, this is the plane you're going to buy, here's the specs, boom. And you received a plane 5 years down the line that had a flight guidance system that was 5 years old in technology, how happy would you be?
You'd be pretty sad. you want the most current that is out there at the time of the delivery.
Exactly. So building airplanes has to be agile. You have to adapt to the technology changes that are coming down the road. And you do that by loosely coupling those modules, right? So the design of the airplane is one thing. Overall architecture is one thing that you're striving toward. But then the systems within that, and there's multiple systems, right? You've got the flight guidance systems, you've got the control systems, you've got the environmental control systems, you've got the back of the seat TV systems. All those are different systems that need to be loosely coupled to the design so that you can take them out and replace them with the most recurrent technology when you go live. Right? So the cycle time, or the sprint time, if you're doing Scrum, right? If the sprint is 2 weeks for software, it may be 6 months for the back of the TV screens. But you are able to adapt to changes in technology as long as you remain loosely coupled. Right? That's one of those concepts in well, you know, I'm sure, from software design. You want to have your systems loosely coupled, well-defined interfaces, but loosely coupled between them, so that if I make changes to this system over here, I don't have to make changes to this system over here, right?
Right, and so I guess one of the questions, as I'm throwing this out to the community, I'm asking them whether being Agile really means being able to respond at the speed at which technology is changing in that organization. Is that kind of what you're getting at, or do you feel like there's also the factor of how quickly are you responding to changes in the market, in the environment? So there's more than just the technology.
It's more than just the technology. Yeah. It's the speed of change. Technology change, requirements change, market change. Absolutely.
And also how much you're learning as you're going, because if you're starting using Agile with a project that has so many unknowns, you're going to need to be faster until some of those unknowns are starting to get better defined.
Right. But you need to plan, you know, that there's going to be these pieces in there. Just like when I'm building the plane, I don't know what the flight guidance system is going to look like when I get to the end. But I do need to build in the space for it and design around it and start building it.
Yeah. So one of the comments we're getting from the Twitter chat, this is from Lisa Sieverts, is saying Agile isn't about handling tech changes, it's about handling the people well. Handling tech change well is icing on the cake.
That's an interesting perspective. I like it. I don't know that that's necessarily one is all and the other is not. I think they're quite balanced, because you cannot do the things that we try and do in Agile organizations without having highly functioning teams. Right? On the other hand, why would you need to deliver quickly working software if you're not adapting to those changes?
You know, it occurs to me, this is a completely different perspective than I've had in the past. To me, Agile is almost directly related to requirements changes and how quickly can you adapt to those. So your concept of how that ties into technology, and as I think about this even as a wider thing, it's really a number of components. It's the technology, how you're right, how quickly the technology can change, how quickly the requirements change, how quickly your organization can handle those kinds of changes,
right.
And then also, as Hall is pointing out, how quickly the people within the organizations can understand and process those changes. It's the whole idea that you have to be adaptable as things change. It's just a different way of handling change in a project. In a waterfall method, you handle change with a change request, and there's usually a very specific process in which you do that change request. Agile has a very specific way of handling change. It's just handled at iterations in a very specific process on how you handle that change. Am I getting it, Joseph?
Yeah, partly. I mean, the concepts in Agile don't just handle change; they encourage, try and elicit the knowing that change is going to be part of life. So that's definitely true. I want to talk again about the people part of it, and Agile is really managing people. I'm actually going to come back and say, no, I disagree. While Agile includes that, I can take all of the things that Agile talks about people management, about people, cooperation, servant leadership, and empowerment of the teams and all that, and do it all on a waterfall project. Every single piece of it. And I did for years. I mean, this is what when I went to Ken Schwaber's class, the thing that was new to me was delivering in iterations, right? I've done servant leadership since I started this stuff. When people would come to me and say, well, we're talking about our projects, and the project manager was like, yeah, I created this project plan, and the team just says they can't work with it, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, why in the heck are you creating a project plan? The people in your team, they know what to do. Trust them. And help them frame that, right? Create the project plan with them. But they're the ones creating the plan because they know what they need to do. How arrogant of a project manager to think that we know better than the people in the field who are actually going to do that work. I may have done similar work in the past, but they're doing this work, right? So all of the things that we talk about as Agile folks delivering in an Agile way that are social context related, all of those I can do in a waterfall project.
So let's talk a little bit more of, okay, so we've talked a little bit about the concept of Agile, and many of us understand how Agile works, especially in Scrum. Not all of us, but we do. Or at least we've somewhat been exposed to it. So Joseph, help us understand how more specific of how we integrate Agile type of activities and or projects in a waterfall world.
So there's really two things that you're saying when you ask that question. There's two ways that people are hearing that, or two contexts in which they're saying, yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking. Right? Some people are hearing being Agile in a waterfall world as I'm doing a traditional project and I want to, with the sequential timelines and everything, but I know these Agile things make sense. What can I do to take some learnings from Agile and put it into my project? Right? How can I do some of those? Just what I was saying, I can do all of the people's things in a waterfall project. How can I do that? What are the things that I can do? The other side of that is I have a team over here of usually software developers that want to do Agile. But the rest of my whole organization is waterfall. How do I do that? Does that make sense? So those are two very different perspectives that people are coming to it.
You're right. Okay.
So we'll hit the first one first, and then try and hit the second one too.
Okay.
Does that sound good, or which one do you want?
No, that sounds great. Just so everybody's really clear, state exactly what you're going to talk about on the first one. What is that specific situation?
So the specific situation is I'm a project manager, and I'm in an insurance company or a bank, and everything there is run traditional, sequential, typically hierarchical, right? Top people have the authority, and they sort of delegate, but not always. How can I take some of what I see my peers and talk to my peers at the PMI convention or whatever, and I see these great things that they're doing with this Agile thing. Is there anything that I can do to bring into my world that can help me on my current project?
Now, are you talking about tools, processes, that type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So there's a lot of different things you can do. And I think I'm curious what Paula's seeing out there, but you went mute.
Yeah.
Twitter community is following with our questions, and actually we're getting some really interesting comments on what you can integrate from Agile within a waterfall project. Some of someone said that one of the first things to integrate would be frequent retrospectives. This is Lisa Sieverts again, and I totally agree with that.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of retrospectives. On my wall over here, you can see stickies from my last retrospective, and we called it "What Went Well, Not So Hot, and Fix It." And you know, it doesn't matter what kind of project you're running, if you are able to get that kind of feedback on a frequent and ongoing basis, you're just going to be so much more successful. So that's one of the things that I think doesn't matter what kind of methodology you're using. Somebody else said that you need to keep. So this is Lisa Crispin. I'm a big fan of the book.
Say hi for me.
Joseph says hi, Lisa. And she says that the keeping tech debt low, so you want to keep your tech debt low, and core practices like continuous integration, test-driven development, and whole team approach.
Good stuff. Yeah. So the very first thing go ahead.
No, you're on.
Okay, I thought you were talking. The first thing that I always tell people is, if you can do nothing else with your organization, start doing retrospectives. It's great because as a project manager, that's usually within your domain of control. You can very easily get your team together on a monthly basis, at the very least, and do just what you said. You know, what went well, what could have gone better, kinds of things. Obviously, you want to learn how to do retrospectives because there's more to it than just figuring out what went wrong, right? More actually focusing on what went right and how we can leverage our strengths.
You mean you don't have to wait to the very end of a project to do a lessons learned and never use that?
No, why do a lessons learned? That's just going to bring everyone down.
Ever. No, I never ever do a lessons learned. Never. It's not worth your time. I'll not get started on that, other than to say that every purpose for doing the lessons learned at the end of a project is useless. Right there, the lessons that you learn out of it, I am going to go on. The lessons that you learn from it are typically team-specific, or technology-specific, or project-specific. Right? The useful ones. The other ones are communication needed to be better. We had trouble with requirements. Well, duh. Who doesn't, right?
The stakeholders kept changing their requirements.
Yeah.
Adding new things in the middle of development.
Did you sit down the last lessons learned?
It's a matter of life.
Yeah. So.
And then you have to take those lessons learned and translate that into another project later on. I've seen it very, very rarely work.
The team doesn't exist anymore. The technology you're now familiar with and the project context is gone. So the useful ones that we found early on, you can't use. The other ones are so esoteric to be useful, to be useless. So.
Okay, great. That's your box.
Okay,
That's your box.
I'm down now. Sorry.
No, perfect. It was a great. Okay, so the retrospectives was the first one. What were the other things we're talking about?
I would focus on the teams and establishing current leadership kind of problem in your organization. So from your perspective, I'm talking to project managers here because we're on the Sensible Project Manager chat, right? And so I would want to focus on us as project managers on our leadership style, right? And trying to trust more, right? Trying to be the servant leader, right? What is it that the team needs? How can I make their lives easier? Right? My job is not to push them until they break. My job is to make their lives easy so they can do better work. I was with a client yesterday. It was great. We were talking about the role of the product owner in this very Waterfall context, state government context. And they were saying that on one of the Agile projects that we were doing, that they got so much done at the end because everyone was having such fun. They were enjoying their life, and so they were able to deliver so much more. So we need to establish a context for that. And I've looked around, and there's lots of things out there about teamwork and different approaches. If you haven't read the books, right, you should. Everyone needs to read the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and Crucial Conversations. I think I heard somebody say that. I'm looking at your last conversations here. Extraordinary Groups is a great book. There's another one, though, that I just recently found, and well, recently within the last 9 months, that's called How NASA Builds Teams. And it was written by Charlie Pellerin, who was the lead on the Hubble Space Telescope program. And if you remember anything about that program, it was a failure because they launched the telescope with a lens that was ground wrong, and nobody said anything about it.
No.
And they spent millions of dollars to fix it, and they did fix it and all that, and he tells the great stories about it. But what it came down to in that project was it was actually a social context problem, a culture, if you will, problem that caused that telescope to be launched with a lens that was ground wrong, because they had established such a toxic environment that the contractors convinced themselves that what they were seeing was wrong, right? They did see the problem, but they convinced themselves that what they were seeing was wrong because they really didn't want to tell NASA. Well, because they were handed their hat, right? Head on a plate. They didn't want to do it, and so they didn't. And it cost millions of dollars, and Charlie feels horrible about that. So he wrote this book, and for the past 20 years has been building teams of technical scientists and engineers, and I was able to go see one of the workshops, and it's quite an amazing thing. So team building for technical people is different than team building for social workers, right?
So Joseph, you've mentioned 2 different books there. Would you do me a favor and send me those names and authors afterwards? I'll include those in the Hangout notes.
Yep.
I put some of those suggestions on the Twitter as well, the book suggestions.
Great, thank you.
You can also check out the nasateambuilding.com. That's Charlie Pellerin's website about the 4D stuff. The great thing about his stuff is he makes the PowerPoints for his workshops all available, so you can just download them. There's providers and things like that can teach the workshops, but he makes it all available. So focus on teamwork and servant leadership. Do retrospectives right away.
I have a question about about the servant leadership within a waterfall context. When the project manager has a very different, is tasked with really, the point that I'm going to try to get at is that servant leadership is not something that a project manager within a very traditional waterfall organization can necessarily take on as something that they decide that they want to do. I mean, in certain aspects, you can. So the way that I've always worked with teams has been very collaborative at getting people's opinions and making sure that everyone's. But however, if you're in an organization where you're expected to task certain things out, or have a very, you need to be done with this certain thing by this time, and you're actually evaluated based on your ability to follow that command and control, right? Then as a project manager, really that servant leadership needs to come from maybe one level above you, where you're being encouraged to be more of, take on more of the characteristics of how a scrum master maybe would handle a team, which is more facilitating the process and making sure things are getting done the right way versus very specifically into the tasks or telling people what to do. So I just struggle with that a little bit, because I know that you can definitely have a mentality of servant leadership and have that as this is just your personality or how you lead and your leadership style. However, I think it still needs to have a little bit more of support at a level higher maybe than the project manager in the waterfall context.
In my experience, I would disagree. Right? I have worked in those contexts, and I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And while I may have one, I'm trying to say this, my attitude toward my team is always the same, no matter what they're evaluating me on. And I know from my experience that if I take the servant leader approach, I will be more successful than trying to do it the other way, than anyone who tries to do it the other way. Right?
I have found the same thing. I think that's my leadership style as well, and most of my career has been in the waterfall world, and I think that I've been very effective in using the servant leadership approach. Hey, can we move?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I want to move the conversation on a little bit. We talked a little bit about the first item. We have about 15 minutes. We talked about that first situation, about what are those kinds of tools and things or processes that you can bring in to an existing project. Is there? Let's one last thing. Is there anything else we want to add to what we've already said? And then let's move into the other situation that you're talking about as well. So the thing that, just as a last parting comment I thought of, is one of the things I think is handy if I have a project that is a waterfall project, I can still have stand-up meetings. Daily stand-up meetings are very effective in a waterfall project.
Yeah. Actually, construction sites do it all the time. Every morning, the construction team gets together and they stand there and they talk about what they're doing. It's a safety thing for them, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
You'd be swinging a beam over my head today.
Okay, so move into the other half of what you were talking about, and that is, well, maybe you can describe better that situation.
Yeah. The other side is you have a team that wants to be or has a history of doing Agile, being an Agile organization, and within an organization that is waterfall. And
so I'm sorry. So in that case, what you're talking about is, for instance, a total Scrum team that is working totally agile project, and the rest of the organization is waterfall. Correct?
yeah,
Okay.
and I smile because a totally agile project within this context is actually not likely to be possible. It's very difficult at best. Having those things like a dedicated team, it's very hard to get a dedicated team in these organizations. We describe the organization that most people are in this scenario are probably a part of. You are again at an insurance company. You are in the IT department of that insurance company. And in the IT department, you're in the software development part of that. And in that, you are in a group that wants to do Agile. So you're down here somewhere in the org chart. Okay, so here, so you can see my name.
Yes, yeah.
You're down low in the org chart, right? And somewhere up here is the person that is making life waterfall, right? The rest of the organization is delivering the main product of the company. It may be loans, or it may be insurance, or it may be whatever you want to call it. You, in this little IT part of the world, are a support organization to that. And now you want to do Agile. Right? And so down here at the bottom of the org chart, you're screaming, "Let's have a dedicated team!" Nobody's
You do that again.
Nobody's listening to you, right? You're not likely to get a dedicated team. And I'm not saying you shouldn't fight for that. I'm saying you should. And using Agile, you will be able to actually highlight how not having a dedicated team is hurting you. So go forward and do Agile processes and become an Agile organization within the context of your larger organization. But just be ready for a long slog. It is likely, and I don't mean to sound defeatist. Some people will say I'm being negative, but it is likely that you will never in your career change that entire organization to become an Agile organization. So be ready for that, right?
Yeah, that is a tough sell. All right, I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But that doesn't mean that you can't get a lot of the benefits of being an Agile organization inside that work, right? So, you can do your daily standards, you can deliver in sprints. What you probably can't do is deliver to production in sprints because you have a larger organization that has release windows and maybe release trains or whatever, however they want to deal with that. Maybe your organization has a 6-month release window. We only do updates to our software or website or whatever every 6 months. Well, delivering every 2 weeks, you may be thinking, well, gee, we have to change our release cycle. Not necessarily, right? You can still deliver within your organization, deliver to a staged environment, and start and just queue things up, and then release with the regular window, right? So don't be afraid to start releasing on regular cycles, but also don't back off and say, well, we've got a 6-month release window, so we don't have to be done at the end of our sprint. The value is actually in getting done. I was working with one of my teams, like one of my customers, and they were delivering a piece of software that originally was planned to take 2 years, and they actually were to be able to deliver anything. And within 4 months, they actually had their first release available. Blew their minds. They've never seen anything like it. Neither had the people they were delivering to. And they were demoing this at about 6 months down the road. They were demoing because they were getting close to being able to release because of the release window. And they got done with the demo that they were showing the internal customers what they were going to be using and so they understand the tool. And the people were like, that's great, it works. What's going on? And they're like, what? What's wrong? Like, we have never seen an IT person at this point in a project so happy. What are you doing? And they were able to tell them about how we're not worried about releasing. That we're not worried whether it's going to work or not. It's been working for months. It worked after the first couple of sprints. It took them a while to get themselves as an active team, and then after that they're just delivering and it's working. Every 2 weeks they're just adding more Lego blocks to the building, right? So you can get huge value out of it. You just have to be ready to make unfortunately, some compromises. And
so let me see if I can understand. So what you're saying is, you can have the situation where you're having an agile team that is working, and actually being able to see the benefits of agile development, for instance, and but beware that team is going to have to do some compromises because it is melding in a waterfall world. And what I also hear is, in that kind of situation, be prepared for surprises that you're actually delivering quicker than what is expected.
Exactly. You're going to be delivering quicker than what people are used to. It's going to be easier for you on your stomach acid.
Okay, so Hala, is there anything that's happening on Twitter that we can bring into the conversation as well?
Let me give you guys some of the comments. A lot of people are going back on the point about servant leadership, and that it really is about a mindset, and that's kind of doesn't matter what role or title you are, you either are or you aren't, and you embody that in whatever position you have. So that's back to the discussion we had earlier. And I was throwing that out because I also wanted to bring that up and make it a point of debate, because some people have a sense that in a project management role you have to do things a certain way, and I wanted to go back to your point, Joseph, earlier that you had said, it really is about, Agile has all of these great principles and teamwork and servant leadership, but they don't only exist in, or have to exist within Agile. And so having people debate that point was really, really interesting. And some people were saying servant leadership is about getting over yourself and truly becoming a useful leader. Michael Greer had a great image that he gave, which is servant leadership in any context is the guy in the parade behind the elephants cleaning the street for the marching band. So just do it, just do it. People are really enjoying your book suggestions, so hopefully that's going to be helpful to people going out there. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, people are really looking at the concept of within whatever type of method you're running, helping the team envision this idea of getting to the minimum viable product, and other people are calling it the minimum lovable product. So what is it that we can focus on as a team and deliver something quickly? Similar to your 4-month story where it might not seem possible, but if you really focus on the core set of features and requirements that'll get you somewhere and show that you can succeed, that's a great thing to adopt whatever methodology you're following.
Well, and an interesting thing to think about there is most projects these days, actually big, significant projects, aren't the big bang anymore, right? You typically have 1, 2 releases, maybe 3 releases, and what I encourage people to do is say, it's like, okay, if you've got 2 releases, make 4. If you've got 3 releases, try for 6. How many releases can you push it down to? Let's not do Agile. Let's just have more releases.
Just doing that will allow you to be more agile. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And I'm not saying that that's what Agile is. I'm saying this is a piece that we can add into traditional environments to try and gain some of the value that we get out of that.
Great. Anything else, Hala?
I just had one last thing, is that as I kind of probably see different organizations and different structures and different methods and different teams and how you have to, flex your style in different contexts, I've kind of stopped really calling anything a name, if you will. So I don't care if you call it Agile anymore. I don't care if you call it whatever you call it. I think it's really, what are the practices that we can take that we know are going to bring improvement into the context and the team and the project that we're in, and adopt those the right way that works with the team that we're working with, and what we're trying to achieve. It's always going to be a little bit different, and people get hung up on names sometimes and on labels, and I just try to now push that out of the equation, that I'm not calling what we're doing anything in particular. This is just how we're going to operate.
Yeah, and I'm actually tired of the word Agile. I'm just tired of it. And I'm an Agile coach, and I use the term, but man, let's just get over it and just get on with delivering good stuff, using the best practice wherever it comes from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. Well, we need to wind this down because we are at the top of the hour. Just wanted to give Joseph, just any last parting comments, any thoughts to wind it up?
Yeah, I just think that it doesn't matter what, like we were just saying, it doesn't matter what context you're in or what the rest of the organization is doing. Trying to do the best practices that you can bring in, being the best project leader that you can be, and you will see success in that, right? I think bringing in things like servant leadership and trust of the team are things that are going to buoy you up in that world, and you will find success.
Great. And one last thing, where can we find you? Anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, you can find me at www.whitewaterprojects.com or Joseph at whitewaterprojects.com, and happy to talk with anybody and join you there. One of the things I didn't mention early in the introductions is I am the co-lead for PMI's ACP, Agile Certified Practitioner Content Support Team. And if you are on the PMI Agile Community of Practice, you'll find me hanging out in there. So if you're a PMI person, join that community of practice. It's free, and it's got lots of good stuff in there. I like the ACP as a certification. We could maybe do a whole thing on just the ACP. So that's where you can find me. Please reach out to me. Actually, at Joseph_Flahiff on Twitter as well. So I am sporadic in my Twitter activity. So email is the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. Well, thank you, Joseph, for joining us. Hala, thank you so much for joining in. You added quite a bit, and I appreciate you sharing the being our Twitter correspondent.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Ivan, Ivan had to drop off, it looks like, so I would also want to thank him. He's the second time he's been with us. So I'm going to wind it up. Thank you so much for everybody that's listening. Again, this will be recorded, or is recorded, and you will be able to find this and the notes for this Hangout at sensiblepm.com/hangout11. I will have that either there later on today or tomorrow. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Oh, Hala has one more thing.
Oh no, I was just saying 11. Vote.
Oh. Number 11. Great.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it, and until next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.